Justin Trudeau's desire to censor the opinions of Canadians online runs so deep that his government tried to censor and demand corrections to letters to the editor. It is so crazy. Good thing I have the documents to show you to prove it. A few days ago, I did a video in which I showed you documents from Corrections Service Canada, wherein managers there attempted on at least 3 separate occasions to have Twitter remove tweets about prisoners in federal custody for the crimes of bullying and inaccurate information. And those crimes are the crimes of the Twitter poster, of course, and not the criminals in federal custody. These bizarre attempts to spare the feelings of federal inmates from Twitter comments they probably shouldn't have been allowed to see anyway while in federal custody was revealed in an order paper question posed by Conservative MP Dan Albus. And in another previous report I did on that same order paper response, we could see that the Treasury Board was attempting to censor the LinkedIn comments of random Canadian citizens. You can see that report and the previous one right now at rebelnews.com. And we're not done going through the Liberals' attempts to censor Canadians online. We have a new order paper response, this time to a question posed by Alberta Conservative MP Rachel Thomas. There are over 350 pages of documents here. And in them, we can see the Liberals attempting to censor letters to the editor, wherein the public historically has their chance to offer their own opinions on current events. And the Liberal censorship is not bound by minutia or significance or readership numbers. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency demanded a correction in a letter to the editor in the publication The Ontario Farmer. Now, I don't even care what the correction was for. Letters to the editor are where the public has their say in the free press. And the Liberals were so offended that somebody had their say and expressed an opinion that ran contrary to whatever the government says are true facts that they made an official request to rebut the letter to the editor. Now, this is the carrot and the stick. You see, if you're a member of the mainstream media in this country, you take money from the government for your publication. But then the government gets to control what's in that publication. You know, you've got to give it to the Liberals, though. They are learning. When the Aberhart Social Credit government tried this in Alberta during the 1930s, that government only had the stick. It was called the Press Act, and it required a newspaper to give the government space to rebut critical things published about the government within the pages of said newspaper. The whole thing ended up in a legal battle, and the law was overturned, and the Edmonton Journal was given a Pulitzer Prize for its strong defense of the free press. Now the Edmonton Journal takes money from the government to do the government's bidding, just so that they can keep access to that money. And as for the Liberals, they apparently have time to fact-check random letters to the editor and LinkedIn comments, but ministers and officials say they don't have time to read memos about Chinese election interference.
I understand it going back to the July 20th, 2021 memo from CSIS that indicated that MPs were being targeted by a Beijing diplomat, one of those MPs being Michael Chong. It went to you as the Deputy Minister of National Defense at the time. It was a read only for you. In other words, no other official in your department was authorized to read that memo, but you were on vacation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And presumably you came back from vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened to the memo?
It would have been destroyed through destruction processes. It wasn't lying around as a risk.
And ministers, well, they don't have time to keep on top of the custodial transfers of convicted serial killers like Paul Bernardo.
His office knew on March the 2nd. He expects us to believe that his staff just forgot to walk down the hall and inform him that perhaps the most notorious killer in Canadian history was being moved out of a maximum security penitentiary to enjoy more luxuries and more freedoms in a medium security penitentiary. Finally, he has the power now to designate mass murderers all to go into maximum security prisons. He could have done that weeks ago, Why hasn't he done it? And why hasn't he resigned?
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada lays out a prescription for political interference, which foreshadows what Canadians would get with a Conservative government. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we recognize the independence of those decisions. And when I became aware of the fact that Bernardo had been transferred to a medium security institution, I raised it with the Commissioner. I raised the concern, Speaker. In the questions that are posed by the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Canadians know they will get a prescription for political interference.
So to summarize, according to Team Trudeau, a letter to the editor, an Ontario farmer, or random comments on LinkedIn, well, those are top priority. But they don't prioritize reading memos from CSIS about boring national security stuff or alerts from Corrections Canada about Paul Bernardo. It's not easy to make priorities. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. There are nearly 375 pages of these documents to go through. To help fund our Access to Information research project, please consider making a donation to rebelinvestigates.com. And thanks in advance to everyone who makes this important accountability journalism possible.